Basically, I'm from Southern California. I'm from Naples, California, originally, which is like in Long Beach, you know, that area.
Yeah.
And then my mom, when my dad left, my mom remarried, and I moved to Sunset Beach, California, which is just below Seal Beach, and then Huntington Harbor, then Newport. And then I lived in Laguna for years too.
Okay.
And but I've been basically a Californian all my life. Although I said my first goo goo gagas in Heidelberg, Germany, because I was there till I was one.
Jeez.
You know? Yeah. But my folks are California natives.
Okay. So how did you get into the scene of playing music in LA? I mean, were you like how did it kind of happen?
Well, you know, I was really lucky, Cliff. I was right out of high school. I was asked to join a band that already had a record deal, and that band became Honk, H-O-N-K, and they had a record deal under another name, but they'd broken up and were reforming, but still had this record deal. So Honk had a publishing deal, this record deal, and all of that. So I kind of got a lot of studio experience just doing demos with that band, Honk. And then we did a few albums, one of which, we weren't a surf band, but we did the soundtrack for a surf movie, and it went on to become the biggest selling movie of 35 millimeter or 16 millimeter, whatever. I'm not a film guy.
Right.
Of all times. I mean, of any genre, and all over the world it became this big deal.
What was this? What was the movie?
The movie was called Five Summer Stories.
Oh, okay. All
yeah, it was done by Greg McGillivray and Jim Freeman, and we were dumb hippies. You know, we did the whole soundtrack for $1,500, and
wow.
You know, we didn't know what we were doing, and you know, the guy, two of us in the band surfed, and so Greg described who was surfing where, and so we kind of knew, you know, those surfers' style and kind of imagined what Pipeline looked like that day, or Haleiwa, or, you know, Malibu, or wherever, you know. So anyway, it turned out we had a #1 record in Hawaii, and so that was, I mean, kick-started my career, kind of. Even though we weren't a surf band, we were kind of really artsy-fartsy, and sort of, I guess you could say we were kind of ahead of our time. We proved two people wrong. Jimi Hendrix, who said you'll never hear surf music again, and we also proved Kenny Loggins and Jim Messina don't play anything mellow with the whiskey, because we did a bunch of folk songs at the whiskey years ago. And it was kind of prophetic. I ended up working with Kenny.
I was going to say that. I think that's probably the first time I saw you was either with Kenny Loggins or maybe with Jarreau.
Ah, okay.
I think. Didn't I see you played with Al Jarreau?
I did. I played with Al Jarreau for about 4 years.
Yeah, I think I saw that at San Diego State when I was.
Oh wow, man!
When I was a kid.
If I'd have known you were there, I would have been so nervous.
Yeah, right.
I'm telling you,
I was probably in 7th grade, I think, when I saw that.
Oh my God!
And I remember thinking, like, God, that band sounds unbelievable, man. I hope I get to do that at some point. That's really something.
I didn't know you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well. Yeah, well, the gig with Kenny actually was really what put me on the map, kind of, if I can say that. I was so fortunate to be asked to join the Loggins band. There was all these guys that auditioned. I really didn't think I had a deer fart in a windstorm's chance, you know, of even getting a gig, you know, with Kenny. And I already had a gig. I was playing with this guy, Ian Matthews, who was a British singer-songwriter who had been in Fairport Convention. And then he'd had some hits on his own. And I'd done a couple of albums with him. And so we were getting ready to go out and open for Little Feat for a tour. But I heard about these auditions and how great this Kenny Loggins album was that Phil Ramone and Bob James had produced here in New York.
What record was it?
That was Celebrate Me Home.
Okay.
And anyway, Steve Gadd and Harvey Mason had played drums on the record, but the bass player, Kenny's bass player, George Hawkins, was was on the record and still in the band. He was the guy conducting the auditions, and so I showed up kind of really not. I was one of the last guys to audition, and man, they kept calling me back, and I was going, "Oh Jesus!"
You act surprised.
Well, I was blown away. I mean, it was like they had like I knew a lot of the guys that and respected so many of the guys that had auditioned. I was going, "There's no way, man. I'm gonna get," you know. And then I end up getting called back, and finally I was going, "Shit, what if I get this gig?" You know, it's like, what am I going to tell Ian? You know, so anyway, I got the gig. You know, and I was lucky enough to be a part of all those great records that in Kenny's career that, you know, like This Is It and Heart to Heart.
That's all you.
Songs, you know,
those
me.
are all you, man.
Yeah,
those are classic records, man.
Oh man, I'm so grateful to have been a part, man. And you know, I think the first hit that I played on with him was that duet with Stevie Nicks called "Whenever I Call You Friend."
Oh yeah.
That was the first hit, and then we did "I'm All Right" for Caddyshack.
Yeah, boy, I remember all that stuff.
Yeah, and then he sort of became the soundtrack king there for a while. So I played on Footloose too.
That's probably one of the biggest songs of all time.
Oh man!
I mean, like that's got to be an amazing sense of an accomplishment. You know?
Well, it kind of is, and I've got to tell you a story. In all honesty, about that, I remember we were on the road, and Kenny knew that you know he had this song that was going to be the theme song of the movie, and he'd pretty much written it. And he had us at sound check. He was so big on sound checks. They were like 2 hours long sometimes.
Boy.
They were like rehearsals,
right?
You know. So anyway, so we were going through Footloose over and over again every day, you know. And it was like, oh God, man.
Right.
We were hating the song, man.
Was it developed into the song by that time, like what it eventually would be?
Yeah. It was pretty much. I mean, right down to the drum breakdown, because he's such a you know, like a stickler for detail.
Right.
I had to come up with a part that he approved of. And,
Right.
And he'd work on them sometimes with me, you know. So anyway, so I'd come up with a part he approved of. And so I remember when we went in and to cut it, we cut it in 2 takes. One was for sound, and the other was it. Because we knew it so well. And I remember walking out with Nathan East kind of arm in arm going, well, that's the last time we'll ever have to hear that piece of crap.
Oh my God!
Because we were so sick of it.
Oh my God! Little did you know.
Little did we know. And I have to admit, like when you turn the dial on the radio and you'd hear it on every station, I started liking it a little more.
Oh man, it's an incredibly catchy tune, and not to mention, you know, I mean, it's like, boy, that's really something. It's so funny to hear stories about how that stuff actually happens and what the guys think in the band.
Yeah.
So you rehearsed it all the time. You were playing it were you playing it live as well, or just
just at sound checks?
Okay. Boy.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. Buzzy Featon was in the band then too, and Nathan and Neil Larson, you know, and so Neil and Buzzy started saying, "Hey Kenny, how about a little rehearsal pay for these sound checks?" And then, I mean, sound checks stopped.
Now, after the Kenny thing, how long did the Kenny thing go on for?
I played with him for almost 12 years, and then and I still. Well, then I joined Jarreau, and then I came back and played with Kenny. I joined in 1977, and I played on and off with him until, well, the last hit record I played on of his was in 1991. I think it was called "Conviction of the Heart." It was a song called. It was off this album "Leap of Faith." That was in. And he used to call me, you know, for studio stuff now and again, and so that was cool. But in the interim, I played with Al Jarreau for those. There was a 4-year period where I was out with Al.
And were you recording with Al too?
Yeah, we did a little recording. Unfortunately, the stuff we did ended up not on the record.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Oh man, I know. George Duke produced. I mean, they were great.
Yeah,
it came out great, but the management at that time was trying to change Al's image, which we thought was kind of absurd. Here he is, one of the greatest jazz singers of our age, and he was trying to make him into Bobby Brown at that
this,
time.
It's just like one of those things about this business that always, it just never, stuff like this just will always happen, I guess. Managers do stuff like that. It's the business side of stuff.
Totally.
That brings me to another question. Like, you now, excuse me, speaking as somebody who's been in the business for, I mean, early 80s, late 70s, you started playing. Mm-hmm. What do you think's different now in terms of, like, if a drummer was to come to LA and get in the scene or try to work in the scene, what's different? What off the top of your head? I mean, you're still in the scene. You're in Chicago now and working constantly, and I would imagine you do plenty of stuff when you're in town. Wow. But, like, what's the scene in LA these days?
I wish I could honestly tell you what it is, but it's kind of a double-edged sword for me right now, because I'm a part of Chicago. The band works almost constantly, and so my in-town thing, that there used to be producers that would use me when I was in town, is kind of gone by the wayside. So it's not that often that I get called for a project these days, because in truth we're gone like 8 months or more out of the year, sometimes 9 months, and but to somebody that would move to LA right now and be trying to break in, I'd have to say the same thing that I'd always said, which was, and that was, take everything that comes your way, whether it's a casual or a demo or anything. I mean, because you never know who might be there and who you might meet and what that might lead to. That's what I kind of did, and I just said yes all the time.
Right. Right.
And it was like, gratefully, I grew up in an age where people, they were still doing publishing demos with rhythm sections, and in a studio, and without a click, and so I mean, or without Pro Tools and all of that, so if a drummer had a feel that somebody liked, or an imagination that somebody liked, sometimes they say, hey, who was that on drums, and you can kind of make your way in that way.
Right.
But nowadays, with the advent of all the technology, it's sort of a double-edged sword. It's like, it's on one hand incredibly, what's the word? Well, it's incredible tools that we have to create, to paint with, if you will. But at the same time, it sort of makes a mockery of guys like yourself, and I'd like to say me, and players that play and work their whole lives to play time, man, and know how to do that, man, and play from here, and so that's that kind of.
That's double-edged sword is oh, me too. I mean, and that's the thing too, is that I explain to a lot of people now that are not musicians, like friends of mine who are not musicians, and I tell them, like, you don't have to play anymore. You can just go in, they'll fix everything.
Exactly.
And and now, unfortunately, there are a lot of bands that get deals and can't play at all because they're fixed.
Exactly.
And when they go on the road, they just play with the track, and people don't really know that.
Man, I know. And that,
yeah, it's very frustrating,
it is
especially somebody like you put the time in, and who's like, and you've been through the real times when you really have to play. With a click or without a click, whatever. Sure. Without a click is even like,
Sure. Well, you too, man. And
well, I have my moments, but it's like, and it is frustrating to see that happen. But that's just how things have progressed.
I know it. I know. The joke, it's like, in the studio now, it's like somebody's out there, it's like, sounds shitty, come on in. I
haven't heard that. I just want to know how you got the Chicago thing.
Well, man, I was I was as shocked by that as anything, man.
You seem to be shocked about these gigs you're getting, and you deserve every one of them. What are you so shocked for?
Because I was fans of all these people that you know that I got called by, and I've just been so blessed. I've kind of gone from one great situation to another, and I've gotten to work with so many of my heroes, you know, either live or in the studio, that I am shocked, you know. But anyway, I was living in L.A., and I'd moved from Orange County to L.A., and I was one of my roommates was George Hawkins, a bass player from Kenny Loggins at that time, and anyway, Bill Champlin called him and said, you know, hey George, how you been? You know, because they had kept in touch, and I'd done a certain amount of work with Bill Champlin, and man, what a genius, you know, great singer and arranger and everything, songwriter, and anyway, he said, asked George, he said, have you seen Tris lately? And he said, yeah, as a matter of fact, he's right here, you know, because I hadn't seen Bill in years, and so I got on the phone, and Bill said, hey man, what are you doing this summer? And I said, you know, that's really funny you should ask. I said, for the first time in I don't know how many years, I don't have a tour this summer. And he said, well, how'd you like to play with the band? And I went, let me think about it, yes.
Yeah.
You know, so from that, I mean, it was like there was no audition. There was nothing. I just went and played, and it clicked, and man, that was it. And now it's been 23 years. Jeez. You can believe that. It's 23 years I've been with this band. I can't believe. But, you know, I'm so grateful, man, for that. You know, my God. And, I mean, what a musical legacy these guys have. And,
well, yeah, you know, and you're part of it. I mean, I've seen the band a bunch of times, as I mentioned, and the records I have, you know, like I have records with you on. I don't think of the band without you in it. You know,
oh, my God,
at this
man.
point. And it's like it's one of those things. So,
oh,
you know,
Cliff,
it was meant to be.
Well, thank you, Cliff. Man.
Yeah.
Well, I am so stoked to be a part of it, man. I really am, and man, I owe Danny Seraphin the hugest debt of gratitude, man. He influenced all of us, you know.
He did.
I mean,
definitely.
he was such an important player, and still is. I'm really happy he's playing again, and he's playing his ass off.
I heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
He really is. And anyway, man, so it's like an honor to kind of, you know, try to reproduce his stuff. But all along they also told me to, you know, feel free to, if I felt like doing something, you know, do that, you know, too. You don't feel like I have to always, you know, reproduce exactly what was on the record. But there's certain things that Danny did that, man, are just like thumbprints, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And they're as important as the chorus line, you know, of a song, you know, so.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, it's a band, man.
Yeah.
How many years has the band been in existence total?
45, going on 46.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many of the original guys are still?
There's 4 of it.
Okay.
4.
And they're all still in the band. They're all still. Man,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. Lately, our saxophonist Walt Perzader has had some health problems, so he hasn't been out as often. But Robert Lamb, who wrote Saturday in the Park, and does anybody really know what time it is? 25 or 6 to 4, only the beginning, all that. He's there. Jimmy Pankow, you know, the great arranger who wrote Just You and Me, and, you know, all kinds of, you know,
major history.
Yeah, boy. My God. And Lee Loughnane, trumpet player. And then the guy that's been subbing for Walter is a great player named Ray Herman, just a killer player. And so he's been with us and been traveling internationally with us too for a while now. So. Yeah.
And you guys are out how many months a year, you said?
At least 8.
Jeez.
At least 8.
And today
9. You're
coming back. You said you just got back from Asia.
Yeah, right? We were in Asia, and then we had about a week and a half's worth of work here in the States, and before the holidays were over. So I made it before the holidays started.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So you normally do the States, Asia, Europe, like all the usual stops.
Yeah, pretty much. Europe is more or less in recent years been added. I don't know why we weren't addressing Europe, but we would always address Japan, Korea, the Philippines, and that. But I think, you know, nowadays, because economically, you know, the world is in the position it is and different. You know, it's forced the band to address, you know, some markets that maybe it wasn't before. You know, the band for a long time was so popular and had been on the road for so long that they would tour primarily just the States, you know, with the exception of the occasional trip to Japan and Asia and that. And I think there was, I don't know why Europe wasn't, you know, like I say, addressed more, because, man, you know, we love playing Europe. I mean, who doesn't love Europe?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they treat you like a, you know, instead of, oh, you're a musician, a second-class citizen, right? They actually respect you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something, man. I describe that to my friends, and they don't believe me when I tell them that.
Yeah.
You know, it's really true.
I know, until you go.
Yeah, it's true. You go like, wow, okay, I do have some validity.
Yeah. Exactly. What, I can get a bank loan over here?
Right.